Section 1. Introduction. The Almanack of Naval Ravikant is a curated guide to two timeless goals: building wealth and cultivating lasting happiness. Compiled by Jorgenson from years of Naval's interviews, tweets, writings, and podcast appearances. The book presents Naval's philosophy in a distilled, practical form. Rather than offering step-by-step tactics or formulas, it frames wealth and happiness as learnable skills. The opening sections make this clear. Naval's ideas aren't meant to be consumed once, they are meant to be revisited, questioned, and folded into one's own thinking. The book positions itself not as an instructional manual, but as a collection of mental tools that readers can apply to design their own path in life. The early pages describe why this project exists. Jorgenson explains that Naval's insights have been scattered across platforms for more than a decade, and valuable ideas often disappear into the noise of the internet. This book was intentionally assembled as a public service, made free to download, and built to preserve Naval's wisdom in one accessible place. Through this collection, readers can move through Naval's perspectives on wealth, happiness, decision-making, judgment, philosophy, and personal growth. Jorgenson emphasizes that every effort has been made to keep Naval's words intact, though the nature of editing transcripts means some rearrangement was required for clarity. The foreword by Tim Ferriss sets the tone for the book's significance. Ferriss describes Naval as someone who thinks from first principles, questions conventions, changes his mind when needed, and avoids taking himself too seriously. Over years of friendship, Ferriss observed Naval in different seasons, success, struggle, and growth, and recognized the consistency and integrity behind his thinking. He reminds readers not to treat Naval's ideas as doctrine. Instead, he encourages them to stress test the ideas, apply them thoughtfully, and stay open-minded as they read. The book also introduces Naval's background, a childhood shaped by immigration, hardship, long hours in public libraries, and a deep relationship with books. These early experiences fueled his curiosity and eventually led him into tech, entrepreneurship, and investing. Naval attributes much of his success to a set of principles he carried from a young age, principles later distilled into his famous tweet storms about wealth and happiness. Together, the opening pages frame the book as a practical, clear, and generous offering. It exists to help readers think better, live with more intention, and understand that wealth and happiness are not gifts handed out randomly, but skills anyone can cultivate with the right mindset, habits, and clarity of thought. Section 2. Building wealth. Naval approaches wealth as a skill, not a stroke of luck. In the early wealth chapters, he explains that getting rich is mostly about understanding how value is created, who you work with, and what games you choose to play. Hard work matters, but only when it is aimed in the right direction. Working 80 hours in the wrong field does not move you closer to wealth. What matters is finding the path where your effort compounds. This idea of compounding sits at the heart of Naval's view of wealth. In his words, the highest returns in life come from long-term games with long-term people. Consistency builds trust, reputation, and opportunity, and those three forces create exponential rewards over time. He breaks down wealth creation into a simple but demanding formula: combine specific knowledge, accountability, and leverage. Specific knowledge is the rare skill set that comes from your natural interests, personal quirks, and the things you learned not because someone taught you, but because you could not help diving into them. These skills feel like play to you and look like hard work to others. Naval stresses that you cannot be easily replaced when you lean into the things that make you unique. If a skill can be taught in a classroom, society can train someone else to do it cheaper, and eventually a computer can do it. When your work comes from genuine curiosity, you become hard to copy. Accountability is the willingness to take risks under your own name. Naval explains that people who step forward, stake their reputation, and take ownership of outcomes open the door to greater rewards. Accountability creates trust. Trust creates opportunity. Opportunity creates wealth. Although accountability exposes you to failure, modern society makes the downside far less dangerous than it once was. Naval reminds readers that failure with integrity is forgivable, but hiding behind a group or avoiding responsibility keeps you stuck. Leverage is the power that multiplies every decision you make. Naval describes three forms of leverage: labor, capital, and products that can scale without needing more effort. Labor and capital require permission from others. Someone must follow you or fund you. The third form, which includes code, media, writing, and digital products, requires no permission at all. This is the most powerful and the most accessible. Through code or content, your work can reach millions while you sleep. Naval points out that the newest billionaires are people who mastered this form of leverage. He also distinguishes wealth from money. Money is a tool for transferring value. Wealth is the asset that works while you are not working. This difference matters because earning money through hourly labor keeps you tied to your time. Ownership breaks that link. Whether through a business, intellectual property, or equity, owning a piece of something that grows is the real path to financial freedom. Naval pushes readers to escape competition through authenticity. You stop competing when you stop copying. By leaning into your natural strengths, playing long-term games, and using leverage that does not require permission, you place yourself in a position where wealth becomes the byproduct of doing what fits you best. Section 3. Specific knowledge, long-term games, and accountability. Naval sees specific knowledge as the foundation of a meaningful and successful career. It is not the type of knowledge you acquire through conventional schooling. Instead, it grows from your natural obsessions, the things you would do even if no one paid you. He encourages readers to pay close attention to what feels like play, because that is often where specific knowledge hides. Maybe you negotiated constantly as a kid, absorbed books quickly, tinkered with technology, or loved diving into arguments. These traits feel ordinary to you, but they stand out as rare strengths to others. Naval argues that most people miss their specific knowledge because they are too busy trying to fit into what they think the world wants. Discovering your edge requires honesty about what you enjoy and the courage to follow it. Once you recognize this knowledge, the next step is leverage. But leverage only works when you pair it with accountability. Naval believes that taking responsibility under your own name is one of the fastest paths to wealth. When you assume accountability, you accept visible risk. Your work is tied to your identity. If something succeeds, the credit is yours. If it fails, the failure is yours too. This level of exposure makes many people uncomfortable. Naval points out that we are wired to avoid embarrassment or public mistakes. But accountability creates trust, and trust is what unlocks the best opportunities. Society rewards the people who step forward and take the risk others avoid. He even notes that in modern life, the downside is often small. Bankruptcy is not a life sentence, and reputations can be rebuilt. Because of this, we should embrace accountability far more than we do. Specific knowledge and accountability become powerful when combined with long-term thinking. Naval states clearly that all meaningful rewards come from compounding. Relationships, reputation, learning, and wealth all grow slowly at first, then accelerate. Long-term games require patience and the right people. The wrong partners can ruin everything. The right partners can multiply results beyond what you could create alone. Naval advises choosing collaborators who have intelligence, energy, and integrity. Intelligence and energy matter, but integrity matters most. A smart, energetic partner without integrity is dangerous. You cannot play long-term games with people you do not trust. Another key point is the concept of iterated games. Naval believes that wealth creation is not a one-time win. Instead, it requires repeated cooperation with people whose values align with yours. When both sides play for the long haul, incentives support honesty, effort, and mutual growth. In these environments, tiny improvements stack up. Reputation becomes an asset. Each positive interaction adds to a growing reserve of trust. Finally, Naval emphasizes that you cannot fake your way through long-term games. People eventually see who you are. He encourages radical honesty with yourself about your strengths and weaknesses. When you pair specific knowledge with integrity, leverage, accountability, and patience, you build a life where your results keep expanding. Compounding becomes inevitable. Over time, your unique skills and consistent actions carve a pay that no competitor can easily match. Section 4. Leverage and the new forms of wealth creation. Naval sees leverage as the great multiplier that separates linear effort from exponential output. Without leverage, your work is tied directly to your time. You earn only when you are present. With leverage, your decisions, creations, and judgment continue to produce results long after the initial effort. This is where modern wealth is built. Naval explains that all leverage falls into three categories: labor, capital, and products that scale without requiring extra effort. Labor is the oldest form of leverage. It is people working for you. In earlier times, entire fortunes were built by those who could organize large groups to execute projects. In today's world, labor leverage is still useful, but it comes with friction. Managing others is difficult. Human beings require motivation, clarity, emotional understanding, and structure. Labor can multiply your output, but it also adds complexity and risk. A single mismanaged relationship can derail a team. Naval sees labor as the least attractive form of leverage because it demands the most energy for the least freedom. Capital is the next level. When you learn to use money to make more money, your decisions scale. A correct judgment can move millions or billions with a single choice. But capital requires permission. Someone must trust you enough to hand you their money. That trust is earned slowly, often through reputation, track record, and accountability. Naval notes that much of the last century's wealth was created by those who mastered capital leverage: investors, financiers, and executives. Capital can scale dramatically, but it is not equally accessible to everyone. The third form of leverage is the most powerful and the most democratic: products with no marginal cost of replication. This includes software, digital content, books, videos, podcasts, online courses, and media of every kind. Once created, these products can be distributed endlessly at little to no cost. Naval considers this the ultimate leverage because it does not require permission. No one must hire you. No one must fund you. With a laptop, an internet connection, and a skill you've honed, you can reach the world. This is why modern fortunes are built by coders, creators, and entrepreneurs who publish online. What makes this form of leverage so transformative is that it rewards judgment and creativity far more than time. A few lines of code can run for years. A single well-made piece of content can reach millions. A digital product can scale globally overnight. Naval argues that society has not fully grasped how wide the opportunity is. The internet has expanded the possible careers far beyond anything traditional education prepares you for. Anyone can build an audience or a business in a niche that once would have been too small to sustain life. Now, even obscure passions can scale. Naval also ties leverage to independence. He encourages optimizing for freedom, not salary. With leverage, you can work based on outputs rather than hours. You can work when you are at your best rather than grinding out time. Ultimately, the goal is not just wealth, but control of your time. Leverage makes that possible. When combined with specific knowledge and accountability, it creates a life where your best decisions generate results far beyond what hard work alone could ever achieve. Section 5. Judgment, decision-making, and thinking. Clearly, Naval believes judgment is the rarest and most valuable skill in the modern world. As leverage grows, so does the impact of each decision. A single choice can move enormous amounts of capital, affect millions of users, or shape years of work. Because of this, sound judgment becomes worth more than raw effort. Naval argues that most people underestimate how much good judgment contributes to success. and overestimate the value of simply working harder. In a leveraged world, the quality of your decisions matters far more than the number of hours you put in. Judgment begins with clear thinking. Naval emphasizes that clear thinking requires stripping away noise, opinions, and identity-driven beliefs. He believes people often see the world not as it is, but as they expect it to be based on past experience or emotional attachments. To think clearly, you must be willing to update your beliefs, discard old assumptions, and avoid clinging to ideas simply because they feel familiar. Naval stresses that this type of clarity comes from reading widely, questioning repeatedly, and observing reality directly rather than relying on secondhand interpretations. A major obstacle to clear thinking is ego. Naval encourages people to detach their identity from their beliefs. If you tie your sense of self to an idea, you become emotionally invested in defending it even when evidence proves it wrong. Clear thinkers, in contrast, see beliefs as tools. If a tool stops working, they replace it. Naval advises adopting the mindset of a scientist. Test, observe, revise. The willingness to be wrong is a sign of strength, not weakness. Another component of sound judgment is understanding incentives. Naval believes incentives explain nearly all human behavior. If you want to predict outcomes, ignore promises and focus on what people are rewarded for. Likewise, before engaging in any endeavor, make sure the incentives align. Misaligned incentives lead to bad decisions, mistrust, and wasted energy. When incentives are right, good behavior becomes automatic. Naval also encourages collecting mental models. These are frameworks drawn from disciplines such as microeconomics, psychology, mathematics, and game theory. Mental models help you interpret situations accurately and avoid common thinking errors. Naval believes that becoming a versatile thinker who can view a problem from multiple angles drastically improves decision quality. Reading is crucial for this. He sees reading not as a hobby, but as a way to download the lessons another mind has spent years refining. Books become leverage for your mind. Action reinforces judgment. Naval is clear that thinking alone is not enough. You must apply what you learn. Doing creates feedback, and feedback sharpens judgment. People who only theorize stay stuck. People who build, experiment, and take risks develop confidence and intuition. Over time, action paired with reflection builds a strong internal compass. Finally, Naval reminds readers that good judgment requires peace. A scattered mind makes poor decisions. Presence, calm, and attention create the space necessary for clarity. When your mind is quiet, you see the world more accurately and choose more wisely. Judgment, then, is not just mental skill, it is a lifestyle. It comes from studying widely, thinking clearly, acting consistently, and mastering your internal state. Section 6. Happiness, Peace, and the Inner Game. Naval treats happiness as a skill, not a mysterious blessing reserved for a lucky few. He believes people misunderstand happiness because they chase it the same way they chase wealth. They expect it to appear after achievement, status, or success. But Naval argues happiness is something you cultivate through habits, awareness, and inner discipline. It is the default state of a mind free from unnecessary desire. This section of the book shifts from external success to internal mastery, showing how peace becomes both the foundation and the reward for a well-lived life. Naval begins with a straightforward principle. Happiness is learned. It is not a trait you are born with. It is trained through practice, much like strength or flexibility. He explains that most suffering comes from wanting. Each desire is a contract you make with yourself to be unhappy until you get what you want. When desire piles up, the mind is never at rest. The moment you get one thing, another craving takes its place. Naval's message is not to abandon ambition, but to understand desire clearly. When you choose your wants carefully and let go of the ones that don't truly matter, you create space for peace. Presence is central to Naval's idea of happiness. The mind spends most of its time replaying the past or predicting the future. Neither brings joy. Joy exists only in the present moment, and learning to anchor yourself in the present is a trainable skill. Naval promotes stillness, meditation, and quiet reflection as ways to strengthen this ability. Meditation is not an escape, but a tool for observing your thoughts without becoming entangled in them. When you can watch your mind instead of reacting to it, you become less controlled by fear, ego, and impulse. Naval also warns against comparison. Envy is the enemy of happiness. In the online world, comparison is constant and automatic. Naval reminds readers that comparing yourself to others is irrational because you don't want someone else's entire life, just one part of it. You cannot choose one slice without accepting every other slice that comes with it. The only meaningful comparison is who you were yesterday. Happiness also requires acceptance. Naval sees acceptance not as resignation, but as clarity. Reality is what it is. Suffering grows when you argue with it. Acceptance lets you move forward without wasting energy resisting things you cannot change. This shift turns challenges into manageable situations instead of emotional storms. Another key component is taking responsibility for yourself. Naval believes peace comes when you stop expecting others to fix your emotional state. You choose your thoughts, your reactions, your habits, and your environment. Caring for yourself isn't selfish, it's required. This includes sleep, nutrition, movement, relationships, and boundaries. When you take care of your physical and mental state, your emotional clarity improves. Finally, Naval teaches that freedom is the ultimate goal. Wealth matters because it buys time. Time matters because it gives you the space to understand yourself, and self-understanding leads to peace. Happiness, in Naval's view, isn't a final destination. It's a daily practice of awareness, presence, responsibility, and simplicity. When you remove the mental clutter that blocks joy, happiness reveals itself as something that was available all along. Section 7. Conclusion. The Almanack of Naval Ravikant closes with a simple message. The outer game of wealth and the inner game of happiness are not separate pursuits. They reinforce each other. Naval's philosophy shows that a life of freedom is built from the inside out. Wealth gives you control over your time. Happiness gives you control over your mind. Together, they create a life that feels both successful and peaceful. But neither comes from shortcuts. Both are learnable skills that require clarity, honesty, and long-term commitment. Naval's thoughts on wealth center on the idea that real financial freedom is earned through specific knowledge, accountability, and leverage. You identify what you alone can offer the world by paying attention to what feels natural to you. You take ownership of your work under your own name, accepting both risk and reward, and you amplify your efforts through products, tools, and systems that keep working even when you are not. This isn't a get-rich-quick approach. It is a long-term alignment of your strengths, your interests, and the opportunities created by technology. Naval shows that wealth becomes inevitable when you consistently apply your unique ability in a leveraged environment over many years. On the other side of the journey, Naval frames happiness as the quieter, deeper skill. It comes from reducing unnecessary desire, practicing presence, and learning to see reality without emotional distortion. He makes it clear that happiness isn't something you earn through achievement. It's something you uncover when you remove the mental habits that create suffering. Acceptance, peace, and self-awareness become daily practices. When you stop comparing, stop chasing every urge, and stop resisting the present moment, happiness emerges as your natural state. What ties the entire book together is Naval's insistence on living intentionally. Every choice, what you work on, who you work with, what you desire, what you consume, how you think, shapes your experience. Naval encourages people to examine life at its root rather than react to it on the surface. He invites readers to question their assumptions, discard unhelpful identities, and design a life where both success and peace are possible. The book ends with a reminder that these ideas are not rules to follow blindly. Naval does not want disciples. He wants thinkers. The real goal is to build your own understanding, your own principles, and your own path. If Naval's ideas serve as inspiration or a set of mental tools, then the book has done its job. Ultimately, the Almanack of Naval Ravikant urges you to build a life where you control your time, master your mind, and create value in a way that is honest to who you are. In that balance between outer freedom and inner peace, you find a way of living that is both effective and deeply fulfilling.